So I've been going through the different pieces of advice that the CDC gives in their page, Coping with a Disaster or Traumatic Event. I'd encourage you to go to that page and find a lot more details there and an overview, but I'm just doing a bit of a deep dive on each of these topics. So the fourth topic that the CDC offers is stay informed. So there's specific advice. They say when you feel that you are missing information, you may become more stressed or nervous. Watch, listen to, or read the news for updates from officials. Be aware that there may be rumors during a crisis, especially on social media. Always check your sources and turn to reliable sources of information like your local government authorities. Okay. So stay informed. When you feel that you are missing information, you may become more stressed or nervous. Watch, listen to, or read the news for updates from officials. Be aware that there may be rumors during a crisis, especially on social media. Always check your sources and turn to reliable sources of information like your local government authorities. There's a lot in here. This is followed by another piece of advice that says avoid too much exposure to news. And so I've played with combining these two pieces of advice, but I'm treating them here separately. So obviously you need to take both of those pieces of advice in balance. And that's why it's interesting what the CDC is doing. They're trying to point you towards a balance. So they advise that if you may become stressed or nervous if you don't know what's going on, right? So if that's the case, you get more news, right? But their later thing says, it can be upsetting to hear about the crisis and see images repeatedly, so that actually takes you down. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, you need to find that balance and go back to that balance. While I'm here, let me just read the other bit of the advice from the CDC about avoiding too much exposure to news. Take breaks from watching, reading, or listening to news stories. It can be upsetting to hear about the crisis and see images repeatedly. Try to do enjoyable activities and return to normal life as much as possible, and check for updates between breaks. So that's some suggestion. Check for updates between breaks, not constantly. Right? Nothing's going to be changing constantly. So first thing we need to do is find the balance between these, which implies we have to diagnose our current mental state. Are we nervous because we don't know what's going on? Or are we nervous because we're getting that reinforced too much? Now, it's actually hard to tell which of those you're suffering from. You never know everything about it, right? So you could always be nervous that you don't know everything about it. I don't know the current case count in Italy. I don't know. I know what it was yesterday, but I don't know what it is today. So maybe I'm nervous. Well, how relevant is that to what you're doing? I mean, are you in the CDC's war room where they're tracking cases globally? Yeah, you need up-to-date, up-to-the-minute knowledge of Italy's, infection rate. If you're just sitting in your apartment, right? And, what if you don't find the infection rate for Italy for a few days? It's going to have zero impact on your life, right? The infection rate in your local city may be of more interest, of course, but look at that nervousness. There is a nervous energy that drives us all the time. The CDC was probably trying to be careful to not, try to put these news stations out of business, but there's a compulsiveness to the way that we look at the news, myself definitely included, at least sometimes. There are people who advocate just taking a clean break from getting any news media for periods of time, month, few months, day, half an hour. It varies, of course, but look at the nervousness, right? But they advise you can be nervous if you don't know what's going on. So think about our parents' generation, previous generations where we didn't have real-time, instantaneous communication everywhere in the world, where people would wait days, weeks, months to get news. When the Civil War ended, I learned recently the celebration of Juneteenth, right, is from when the last vestige of slaves in Texas received news finally that the Civil War had ended. It was like in 1867 or 68. It was 2 or 3 years later, right? Think about how slowly that news traveled, for all kinds of reasons, right? But in general, news is instantaneously available for us. Social media has made internet news seem slow. That's so. If you have internet access, for example, or if you have TV or radio or whatever you might have in the absence of those text messages, everybody, almost everybody in America has the ability to find out about the current state of news. So yes, getting some updates should be fairly easy for us. If you think you need more information, get those updates. Then the other thing that they're advising is, yes, go look at the news, find the news, watch, listen to, read the news for updates from officials, right? Not someone weeping and crying because they've lost their partner, right? Not someone, pitching a conspiracy theory, but look for updates from officials. Why officials? What if you don't trust officials? That happens in our modern age. It's always happened. Some groups of people don't trust officials, right? But the point about an official is that they are accountable to many people, that people have put them into that position because many people thought that they were the most well suited to be in that situation. Even if it was just one higher up who appointed an official, still many people appointed that higher up, right? There's a chain of accountability, responsibility, many eyes are on that person, so they have a lot of pressure to say the right things, or say accurate things. If they don't say accurate things, then there'll be consequences, right? So officials are those who hold a position of public trust, where one person trusts another, and have conspired to put that person in place. They have, they're a more reliable source than just someone, independently coming up with opinions where they're not citing their sources. They have no obligation to cite sources. There's a lot of there are paranoid segments of society that do not trust officials, but it's not, but we need to hold, we need to think rationally about these things and recognize that there's a chain of sources. You can find the sources. There's a chain of trust. Don't be a person who simply distrusts officials because you distrust everyone. Right? Sometimes that's the case. If you distrust everyone, if you think everyone's got some secrets against you and malice and so forth, if you live in a paranoid world, then yes, you'll be paranoid of people in power. But think about, does it reflect something, in our own way of seeing the world, that we don't think there's anyone that we can trust, that, we need to build trust of others in our own heart. We need to recognize that we are actually held up by a huge web of society, and people in every job, every possible aspect of society, they're all working together in their families and so forth. We're actually all holding each other up. Emotionally, we have this massive support system we don't think about, we don't recognize. None of us are really isolated, right? You cannot be isolated. You cannot exist in isolation. Everything we see and touch comes from others. So if you warm your heart to that, recognize with a mind of gratitude the good things that arise, it softens your mind. It helps you to build trust that you're not living in a malicious world that's trying to attack you, right? Living in a malicious world that is trying to attack you. Unless you have overwhelming, irrefutable evidence that it is, well, look at the facts in your situation. If you feel like you are actually being attacked, there are times and places where people are actually being attacked by the community around them. We need to look at that. But look at the facts. look at the players, think of them as people. Think about what's their motivation, right? What did they learn? How have they come to act in this way towards me? Why, if people are being malicious towards you, then why are they being malicious? Is there some reasonable justification? Just think. Try to think in a reasonable way, with humility. Building a mind of trust is powerful. Building a mind of love, building a mind of gratitude is powerful. The CDC specifically advises, be aware that there may be rumors during a crisis, especially on social media. Why especially on social media? What's so bad? That means social media is bad? No. It just means that there are no standards. There's no cross-checking. There's no accountability. There's anonymity. I can get on there and I can say whatever I want. I can make up a beautiful, elaborate story that is utterly false and share it. Nobody's going to stop me. YouTube's not going to kick me off. So anybody can say anything. So social media originally was meant to connect people, right? Stay in touch with your family and friends and so forth. But often in social media, we're connecting with people we simply don't know. We don't even know if they're a real person. We just don't know. There are bots being little fake entities on Twitter, Facebook, and so forth that are not real. Just recently, the US government found a group operating out of, I think it was Nigeria, operating a Russian troll farm that had set up pages on Facebook that had like 200,000 followers on Facebook, and they were about they were specifically targeting African Americans to build a sense of indignation, to sort of capitalize on existing racial tensions, to foment division in American society. But it was fake. They were fake accounts, and they closed them down. So connect on social media, but make sure you're connecting to real people. That's one pro tip, right? Make sure you're actually connecting to real people.